As we talked about previously on the wool segment on Friday's Country Viewpoint program, we said to Andrew we'll set him a task, we'll find something to talk about while we're in recess. We're off until about the 12th of August, aren't we, Andrew?
Yeah, correct. That's right. We're back on track then, so it'll be a couple of weeks away, mate.
Yeah, and so we thought we'd go for a little bit of a deeper dive into some topics we usually can't go into in our regular weekly market chat, and we thought we'd cast our eye across to China, which is obviously a big deal when it comes to the purchasing of our wool and the processing as well.
Yes, mate. Yeah, certainly do. So it's interesting, like through different times of the year, regardless of whether we've got COVID or not, there's an annual sort of pattern that happens in the market, and at this point in time, a lot of they're going through their summer period at this point in time, so it's a very hot part of the year, and it's not unusual for mills to actually slow down production and just pause with the heat and the use of energy in that market, particularly when there's a heavy load on the energy source. So we're seeing a report coming out of China at the moment where they're actually talking about the mills actually reducing production, and that's not a lack of demand. That's just the normal pattern that they come this time of the year. So we've had our rush in the market back in that February, early part of the calendar year. That's driven by demand. And then this time of the year, it can actually slow down a little bit.
Yeah, and that's what I wonder is whether, to a degree, was this part of the buying activity where the Chinese purchasers would have known that this time was coming. They would have probably expected that the COVID zero approach in China was going to persist. So were they heavily buying to have what they needed for when they got back up and running again?
Spot on. Yeah, no, exactly right. So, and also what COVID's actually added to the market now, because they've had their slowdowns, we're talking about Shanghai closing down and the product not getting in there to get processed. It's actually, there's a backlog of processing to happen now. So while the market's actually come off in the last couple of weeks, the wool's actually been delayed in getting to the mills. They're actually busy. And one of the quotes I got out of the reports we've seen this week is semi-processed wool products that are going to be processed in country and then sent out either semi-processed or a finished product outside of China is up 54% compared to the same time last year.
Yep.
That's a big number.
Yep.
So, demand's there. I think it's maybe a bit energy related as well. I think maybe there's cheaper energy within China, so European countries have been using China.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I guess it brings to mind something you mentioned in passing a few times in recent months is also just what working conditions are like for the Chinese factory worker. If they're still pursuing COVID zero, I guess it's probably not a pleasant place to be stuck if you're locked down in your factory.
We've experienced that down in Melbourne, not to actually locked in the factory seat, but certainly working from home and testing and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, imagine living in a country where you've got COVID zero policy in the dense populated area. You're testing every 72 hours for COVID at the moment, and then if there's one case that's brought to authorities, every person in that area has to test every 24 to 48 hours until they get back to zero. And like you say, they're living in their compounds now, so they control it. There's a few that do have the benefit of a compound. They're actually living in the compounds and managing to keep working.
Yeah, that's interesting. When you say area, are you talking about even just the whole sort of, district in the city, or even the whole city has to be tested?
Yeah. I'd sort of break it down to provinces, I suppose. It's like suburbs, I guess. So there's suburbs within the cities. But yeah, you talk about Shanghai at 26 million people. Basically that place was shut down like Melbourne was, and you couldn't leave Shanghai. So it was a massive dampening on their economy. So there's a lot of confidence there at the moment. That's weighing into the market, obviously, and so there is a big domestic market. I think the AWI figures they quite often tout that of the 85% or 90% of the wool clip they take, 50% is consumed domestically, and the other 50% is re-exported. So you listen to the way we're framing this sort of conversation, the export market has really been good in China, but the domestic market's been shot to buggery because of the lack of confidence in government policy and getting out.
And just the last thought, as you talk about China and this sort of pause that's happening in our market here, we talked about, there was heaps of wool coming out of people's ears everywhere in the market. Is this couple of weeks an opportunity for that to maybe find its way through the system?
Yeah, definitely. So they're going to be busy. The mills in China are busy. We're hearing good reports out of Europe on the textile shows over there. So not only for all textiles, wool's getting really, really well showcased. So we're looking pretty good on the finer end. The luxury end looks really good, looks really positive. They're talking about using wool, like heavier garments in the Italy sort of trade shows. That can only be good for wool. The only sad story is, mate, is we talk back to the crossbreds and how bad they are. Domestic economy of China consumes a lot of crossbred wool. Their domestic, obviously, they're just domestically very quiet at the moment, so the demand for crossbreds doesn't look like it's going to improve anytime soon.
Well, I would have thought with all this alarm in the UK about how hot it is, something that breathes well like 100% merino wool would be popular.
Correct. Yeah, and I think that getting that old adage, isn't it? The wool's hot. It's actually not. It actually can be worn. It can be worn in those warmer temperatures for sure, because it wicks that moisture off your body. So yeah, that's starting to get out there, I believe. Yeah, so it's looking good.
All right, Andrew, thanks for joining us, and we'll do another week of just looking at what the market's looking like as we head back 2 weeks' time back into the wool sales. Thanks for joining us again on Fly.
Thanks, Ricky.